Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello, and welcome to the Money and You Show. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host, and we have a very exciting show for you today. We are off on a tear in 2022, so this is great. And before we start, I just want to remind you, we are toward the end of January. Don't give up on goal setting if you haven't done it yet, if you haven't created your plan for the year. I'm all about having a roadmap and a blueprint and a plan, even if you change it along the way. So I just want to remind you that that's important. And the way we do it at Limit Free Life is a little different. We focus quite a bit on your vision, your why, and really the feelings that you want as a result of achieving the goals that you set. So we're doing that so that we can feel a certain way. We're not doing it for the thing. So we're going to help you create that roadmap and understand what feelings you want, and then how to set goals and strategies and actions to reach those goals and ultimately those feelings that you're looking for, along with the money. So with that, we're holding another planning workshop on February 5th. You are welcome to contact me, Michelle at limitfreelife.com. Talk to me about that if that's something that could help you. And with that, I'm not going to spend another minute talking about anything, but I'm going to jump in and introduce today's guest, who I just can't wait to talk to him. It's not going to be long enough, I'm sure. Captain Travis Rossbach has spent the last 30 years studying his entrepreneurial skills. Throughout the previous 10 years, Mr. Rossbach has been proud to introduce sourcing, advising, consulting, public speaking, and business coaching to his expertise. His clients include a wide range of industries, celebrities, individuals, and even countries. He not only shares his tradecraft with others, but also practices it in the many startups in which he's currently involved. Besides entrepreneurship, Travis Rossbach's experience includes scuba diving master instructor, U.S. merchant marine boat captain, commercial airline pilot, long-standing world explorer, yoga instructor, and Reiki practitioner. And it's not mentioned here, but he was the founder and inventor of Hydroflask, something that most of us have in our homes, so we should be familiar with that. I know I have one. My daughter claims it's the only thing she can drink water out of, so I was really excited to have Travis come on and talk about many things. So welcome, Travis.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for having me. That was a great intro. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for being here. You have much going on, and I am really appreciative of the time that you're going to spend here with me and with our listeners. There's so much to share, so many directions we could go, but I want to start with something that really jumped out when I read your bio, which is I'm fascinated by the choices you made in terms of careers from the beginning on and the transitions you made. And wow, you've done a lot of things and you've made a lot of changes. And I'd love to know, I love people who have passions for things. And the things that you've done are clearly things that you have found passion for. So do you want to just talk about how these things came about, and what was the decision-making process as you moved from one thing to another?
Yeah, good question. I think that there was not always a lot of decision-making. It typically, it feels like most of my life, as I've transitioned from A to B to C to D to E, it typically comes as almost a download. Sometimes I just feel like I get hit in the back of the head and it comes out my mouth and I don't know who or what is speaking, but I'm just channeling. I don't know what entity, but I've been told, like when I was a boat let's back up. When I was a dive instructor, I heard just become an instructor. It's like, oh, okay. And I kind of looked around and there was nobody there. And I made a few phone calls and sure enough, there was a dive instructor training starting the next week and I enrolled in it and I passed barely. I 1 point away from failing, but I made it.
Wow.
and I became a dive instructor. And then becoming a boat captain was actually kind of a very easy transition. Like I spent a lot of time on boats, on vessels, on dive boats, parasail boats, other things, kind of growing up in the Caribbean. So it was just kind of a natural fit to get my captain's license. But then one day I was on a yacht and I quit. I no longer wanted to do that, and I realized I have no other thing going on right now. And I had a bit of a oh no moment, and I heard you're an airline pilot. I'm like, oh, okay. So 2001, I became a pilot, and then yeah, with all the different businesses, it was kind of the same way where it was just kind of, but what's that saying about the mother of all necessity?
Mm.
Um,
Oh, goodness.
how does that one go? Something basically like there were times where I just needed money and I needed something to do, and like an opportunity would just present itself, and I would just jump right into it. Other
Mm.
times it would just be like a calling that I would listen to and I would chase or go after.
Wow. Yeah. So, do you feel like you're particularly tapped into your intuition? And then I go back to being a yoga instructor and think, did that allow you to kind of just, understand your inner voice a little better?
Well, actually, yeah, this is interesting. I guess I haven't really put all that together. This is a good counseling session for me. I do think that I've always been highly intuitive. I've had moments even before the yoga where I've had a lot of moments, I should say, now that I think about it. Over the years, I can kind of sort of, I mean, this is going to sound crazy, but I can almost see the future sometimes.
Mm.
Sometimes the future will come 12 to 24 hours in advance. I remember car accidents that I could see
Wow.
were coming, and different major events were going to be happening. And I almost really enjoyed when they happened because I knew that they were over, and it was the kind of the in between time that was the kind of hectic.
Mm.
Oh no, I know something's going to happen. How bad's it going to be? And
Wow.
then when it would happen, I'd almost be grateful that it happened because I knew the extent of it. With the yoga, I think it just came exponentially more. I can kind of perceive further and further down the road, and I guess
Wow.
I hope I don't get locked up for saying that.
No,
It'll never
this is
ruin for much.
fascinating to me because I do think it's a bit of a skill and a talent to be able to tap into your intuition and hear, because I think a lot of people are lost and can't figure out what their passion is or what they want to do because they're not tuned in. So they're looking outside at what the market says they should do or whatever. So I love that. I'm fascinated by how people choose what they choose to do for a living. So sorry, I will I'll rein it in here. I could talk about all that forever. Um, but I do think that's really interesting. And you also didn't seem to, there seems to be sort of a theme, I think. I mean, things seem pretty adventurous. Do you have sort of a set of values or some kind of you know, a framework that you want your life to be part of?
Well, I remember I was probably about 16 or so, and I was at my dad's dive shop in St. Croix in the Virgin Islands. And I remember sitting on the deck thinking very clearly, like making a very real life choice that I wanted to do a profession or a job that other people were paid to do. So if people come scuba diving. All right, I want to be a dive instructor. People go on boats. They pay a lot of money to go on yachts. I want to be a captain. And people pay to travel in airplanes. I want to be a pilot type of thing. And so
Mm,
I kind of made that clear decision that I wanted to be where other people were paying good money to do a lot of fun, where
mm,
people were on holiday or on vacation. And I always really enjoyed that because the people who could afford to come on these vacations were the type of people I wanted to really learn from. I could really pick the brain. I spent on average about 2 weeks with people on holiday before they go back to the mainland, back to the States.
mm.
And so I got to learn, like, how did you make your money to get to be here right now, you know? And so I got to learn their morals and their values and their principles and things like that. So that definitely did happen when I think I was about 16.
Wow. Okay. Well, and you bring up the word money. So, if we could talk about that for just a minute, were there you sound pretty free-spirited, like money wasn't really the driver. I mean, you weren't, running to go become something secure financially or like an accountant. But what role did money play in any of these decisions?
Well, I mean, I grew up right on the middle of a hillside in Salem, and at the top of the hill was the governor's mansion and other mansions right around there. And I knew all of those kids, and I spent a lot of time in their houses and getting to know their families and just being around that sort of millionaire vibe.
Yeah.
But then I go to the bottom of the hill and it was all the homeless people, and I could go down there and shoulder tap for beer. And man, I had so much fun with them as well. And so I kind of got to see both perspectives of things, and really hear the good, the bad, the ugly from both sides, being right there smack dab in the middle. And I realized at a very young age that money doesn't buy happiness, but it does buy security. It does buy freedoms. It does buy luxuries that, the people at the bottom of the hill don't have. So I always knew that, I always wanted to go for the money more
Okay.
than not the money. But I also at the same time never wanted money to be the driving motivator for why I was doing anything. I was
Mm-hmm.
on a yacht. I was about 22, 23 years old, and they offered me 400,000 a year, predominantly in cash, to be the
Wow.
captain of this yacht. And they were going to teach me how to, offshore account it and all this. I did not like the captain at the time. I didn't like the lifestyle. I didn't like being tied to the boat. And I said no. Like,
Mm.
the money was amazing. I never thought I would ever make that much money in my entire life, let alone in 1 year. And I remember saying no, like, I'm just not interested in that. And it turned out to be a good decision. But yeah, it's never really been a driver. But I always like to err on the side of, if I can make more money, I certainly will, because it does help. It does help having, organic food. It does
Mm-hmm.
help having a refrigerator to put the organic food in. It
Yeah.
helps having a house to put the refrigerator for the organic food into. And without money, you can't get the house. And so there's really no reason to talk about the organic food.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Great point. When that, well, there was something I heard too, listening to a podcast that you were on. Um, and we won't spend too much time on Hydroflask, but if you wouldn't mind just kind of taking us quickly through how did that even come about, and how did it grow so well? The reason I was thinking about it though was what I heard on the podcast about how much money they offered you to stay in the end and how you turned it down. So kind of a similar idea. I mean, lifestyle seems to be taking first place here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it basically started. I was just thirsty. I owned my partner and I at the time. We had a sign company in Oahu Signs and Screen Printing, and I was running errands downtown Honolulu, and I was thirsty. I went into the sporting goods store to get a water bottle, and they were all off of the shelves. And I said, what happened? They said, well, there's this stuff. It's called BPA. We're not real sure what it is, but as a precautionary measure, we pulled all the bottles. And I said, well, who's going to fill up this shelf? And they said, nobody. There's nobody to do this.
Huh.
And I said, I will. I'll do this.
Wow.
And just started putting one foot in front of the other, and started, doing everything necessary to make it happen. And next thing I knew, we had like the coolest water bottle on the planet at the time, especially, and at least. And sales just were not the hardest part. The hardest part was funding the growth. The growth was extremely expensive, and it took a lot out of us to pay for that growth. And yeah, after about 5 years, now I kind of look at it as the season just came to an end. And yeah, they said, hey, if you want to stay, we'd like to offer you a lot of money. And they showed me the corporate playbook, and I said, no, like I'm not interested in that. I don't need the money that bad. So I decided to pull the ripcord and bail out.
Hmm. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing how quickly it started and grew. And what would you say was the hardest? Well, other than the funding part, which you've already said, but just in terms of actually creating the product, what was difficult there?
Well, I mean, I'd never been to China. I had no idea how that worked. And so showing up in China and, it was intimidating, but at the same time, and it was just an adventure. I felt very safe. It wasn't like
Mm.
felt like I was going to get robbed or killed. I mean, I've been ethered, I've been shot at, and
Wow.
in other areas, but in China, I felt very safe. And
Hmm.
so, um, learning about manufacturing, learning about the whole, customs and imports and duties and tariffs and all of that, molds and cavities in molds and
Hmm.
shipping and logistics and supply chain. It was a lot, but I had a lot of passion, and I get very curious about things, and I just had a massive, like I was very tunnel vision focused on bringing this product out to the world and just hydrating the masses. I wanted everybody to drink water.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's great. Um, okay. And so from there, you became, well, you are now more of an advisor to entrepreneurs. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically I tried and failed miserably to be sort of retired afterwards. And I mean, I've been studying business since I was about 12 years old. I inherited a fairly good sized bookshelf full of business books, and Jim Rohn, Zig
Hmm.
Ziglar, Brian Tracy, all the masters of business. And that's been a real deep passion of mine most of all of my life. And so after Hydroflask, of course, I took off and traveled and bought all the silly things that you're supposed to do once you get money. Paid off all my debt, which was awesome. It was so good paying off my student loans. It's not cheap becoming a commercial airline pilot or starting a multi-million-dollar international company. Got all that paid off, and then people just kept asking me, Travis, how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do that? And I realized that I was having more fun helping people than I was being retired. So
Mm.
I started the Tumalo group to help others bring their product to life or to help them in their businesses. Now that I've been there, done that quite a few times, it gets easier and easier for me to sort of be that voice of guidance, if not
Hmm.
reason. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm doing now.
I love that. And it is hard. People can come up with very creative, exciting ideas. But then when you think about, you know, doing it, I mean, it opens up a huge, uh, you know, a huge doorway to the unknown. I mean, all the things that you don't know are suddenly hitting you in the face. So um, I think that's so interesting, especially the world we live in, where things are sourced from everywhere. So that's a big part of what you do is helping people with the sourcing.
Yeah, we do. And we're still bringing a lot in from China, and I've got a great Rolodex of very good friends and dang near family in China at this point. But Mexico has proven to be, they're really stepping up their A game, and so we're working really well with Mexico these days, and America too. This current administration is maybe not quite as easy to work here as previous administrations have been, but we're still having a great time manufacturing some things in America also. But that's what I really enjoy. I enjoy kind of like this global hunt for the best factory, and there are
Mm.
pros and cons to all of them. And so just kind of weighing those pros and cons and looking at all of the factors of, you know, why is this good? Why is this not good? And that's what I really enjoy that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big part of what we do.
Well, and that's quite a mystery, I think, to most people. So, yeah, really valuable kind of talent to have. And so if somebody comes to you with an idea, um, how far along would that idea need to be for you to get to helping them?
Basically, I mean, it's almost kind of like tongue in cheek, but it's actually very serious. Like back of napkin, like sketched out on an envelope is kind of what we need. A lot of times people don't even have a sketch. They just come with an idea. We do prefer that they're funded. It's not cheap to bring a product to market. I say it's about $100,000 at the end of the day to get a product from zero to on the shelves,
Mm.
and that's kind of a rough number, but it seems to be a pretty good average. Um, but yeah, I mean, we've got a phenomenal team of people that can help us at any stage get anywhere from A to B, and so yeah, I mean, a napkin or an envelope is really all we need.
I love that. I think it's so interesting. And so, as far as the funding, what do you advise people with respect to that?
I think the best way I kind of look at it is that the best clients I have that we have are funded and have skin in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's friends and family, or some people take out a second mortgage or a third mortgage on their home, or they beg, borrow, steal, rob a bank, whatever it takes, Kickstarter campaigns, things like that. And we can kind of work with people in the different phases of you know raising funds.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like if you don't have any money, don't come see me, but it helps. But we do help people sort of with ideas as to how to go and get the money. We don't personally lend.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay. Very, very interesting. And do you help them? I mean, once once something's underway, and do you help them figure out how to scale, how to hire people? I mean, how does it
Yeah,
work?
to be real honest, like HR and finances are not my jam. I am not the most intelligent person by any means in the room when it comes to hiring and firing people, nor with money, ironically enough. But like damn near every other facet of business, I am right there for them, and I help at any time. I mean, I have clients who call and text me at 3 o'clock in the morning. Whether I answer or not, it's another story. But people kind of freak out, like it's a very um, it's a mental exercise to go through building a brand, or taking your business to the next level. Growth can be very scary.
Yeah.
And so that's where I help.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very interesting. I mean, any particular things that scared you along the way when you were building your previous company?
I was terrified a lot. I think the biggest thing that scared me was just being able to make payroll,
Mm-hmm.
and not knowing how we were going to make payroll and pay bills and pay the factory. I mean, we got up to 40,000 bottles a month pretty dang quick. Well, we had to pay $5.50 a bottle. Well, 40,000 times 550 adds up quick every single month.
Mm-hmm.
And we had anywhere from 90 to 120, 150, 180 days from the time we had to pay the factory to we actually got paid for those products.
Wow.
So there was a lot of time where, there was a lot of sleepless nights where we
Mm-hmm.
didn't know how we were going to make the cut. Had cars repossessed. We even had our garbage can repossessed
Oh.
at one time, which I didn't know was even a thing. It was possible. Um, so yeah, I mean, there was a lot of fright, predominantly around money. And then when the investors came in, everything just kind of changed. Some things got a lot easier, and some things got a lot more difficult. And just the way that those deals are structured is another thing that I do a lot nowadays. Is I definitely no attorney, but I've gone through enough of these contracts that I know good from bad, I think,
Mm-hmm.
or I feel, and what are the ramifications of these different words in these contracts that
Mm-hmm.
or not really even English, it seems like
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, just out of curiosity, from a money standpoint, were you yourself as a CEO or of your company, if that was your in fact title, but were you looking at the numbers in a particular way? I mean, what was your process for, or were you turning that over to somebody else?
Um, well, it was kind of a hybrid. So I'd had a couple businesses prior with my partner who we started the bottle company with, and so she had her lane and I had my lane. I basically did sales and marketing. She did finances and bill pays and stuff like that. Well, I found out that not all the money was where it needed to be, and it wasn't always where it should be. And um, so that was difficult for me to find out, but it kind of gave me a new incentive to get into the books and figure out, okay, even though I don't need to know how to run QuickBooks like the back of my hand, I at least need to know how to log in and kind of look through and know some of the key points. I mean, I'm okay with spreadsheets, but sometimes the numbers just kind of start getting a little dyslexic for me. So I
Yeah,
need to have people kind of help me get through them. I mean, I can look at the bottom of the line, but it's hard for me to go all the way from the top to the bottom.
sure.
So we, after she left, we were very fortunate to bring in a very, very skilled CFO. And I remember looking at her salary and thinking, wow, she's making way more money than I am. She must be worth it. And by golly, she was. Like, it was phenomenal, the difference of having a true CFO versus somebody who could just kind of dabble in that, and
Mm.
who wasn't stealing from the company too. That made a big help as well.
Wow. Well, yeah, you just kind of proved a good point that you do have to have some involvement, even if feel that that's where you want to spend time or where your time is best spent. It's still very important to get to know your own numbers and have at least an overview of what's happening. So,
Yeah, even a 30,000 foot
yeah.
overview is necessary, and the closer to ground level you can get, the better. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay. So is that, do you work with your entrepreneurs on that kind of thing at all?
This is all advice I give,
Mm-hmm.
like how to help them find a good bookkeeper, a good CFO, and how much, I'm kind of like I almost see it as like I'm the voice of reason sometimes. Like, I just kind of help them. And when they're thinking, gosh, do I really need to do this or do I not need to do this? Well, yeah, you probably do need to look into that, and you need to learn a little bit more, and you need to take a crash course, or no, don't worry about that. That's not something you need to focus on right now, and we need to focus on this area over here first, and then you can come back to that. Usually it's they're interested in something, so they want to do more of it, and they're not interested in something else, and so they want to do less of it. Human nature.
Mm-hmm.
And so to I kind of help people get back on course is how I look at it.
Yeah, yeah, fascinating. Is there any particular, without necessarily naming names, is there a case study of somebody that you're working with or have worked with that would be an interesting example?
Um, I have one example that I use. I try not to name a lot of
Yeah, yeah.
names, but yeah, this one is she's out of Texas, and she this is her first entrepreneurial endeavor, and she was right on the cusp of whether she should sign up. I have a 4 phase package that we typically do for sourcing and helping businesses get going, and she was right on the cusp, and she'd said yes, and then she had kind of cold feet, and she called me one afternoon and was like, I don't know what am I going to do. I don't know what I'm doing. Am I doing the right thing? And we talked for about 3 hours, and she hung up and she says, yeah, I'm going to do this. And about 6 weeks later, she raised $9 million to get her
Wow.
business up and running. And it is a success. I mean, they're doing really, really well and starting to go international even. So it's stories like that I just love, because there are times where I hear ideas and I'm like, that doesn't sound like a good idea to me in the least bit. Either I don't want to do that or I'm scared to do it. But no, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other times where it's just like, I get a really good feeling. I can almost see like the roadmap for the future for their company. And it's almost like I can start to channel,
Wow.
and I can channel, like I get in the zone, I get in the flow
Mm-hmm.
state, and I can help people get through where they are to where they're trying to go. And I just think of her name's Sarah, and I always think of Sarah like that. Now we've become good friends over the years, and it's a lot of fun.
Oh, I love that. And that sort of visualizing that you were able to do for yourself. It sounds like you can also do that for other people. So that in itself is pretty cool.
It's amazing, and I
Yeah.
don't like to, like, I don't know, it kind of freaks me out. I kind of don't like to talk about it. I definitely don't sell that to people. I mean, this is, Michelle,
Right.
you're kind of one of the only people have talked to about this, but it's like I don't know the different names for it. Flow state, in the zone,
Mm-hmm.
channeling. I'm not really sure. And I don't really want to pinpoint what it is,
Mm-hmm.
because but I just really appreciate that I am able to do this. And if I'm passionate or I'm curious about a project, I find that I can really open up the channel, and it's almost as though I can see the end of the line, and then it's just a matter of how I have to articulate it to the person next to me that, hey, these are the steps that need to be taken to get to the end. And it's a lot of fun.
I'm crazy about this. That is to me a superpower, and a zone of genius moment. Maybe you've read some of those books since you've the Big Leap and some of those that talk about Gay Hendricks. I think it's the Big
I'm gonna
Leap,
write that down.
talking about the zone of genius. Yeah, that or you the best place for one to be in their zone of genius, which that is definitely something unique that it sounds like you have. So very cool that you can use that with your business. And as you're talking, did you have business coaches along the way? Was that something that did you have mentors and people?
No, I really didn't. My mentors were the books that I read. And over the years, I did get to meet a lot of very successful people. When I flew jet charters, I met a lot of billionaires,
Mm-hmm.
and I was always, and on the yachts too. I met a lot of multimillionaires on the yachts and billionaires in the jets. And so I took my business curiosity, and I was able to talk to them and kind of hear them out and get their side of, how does this work, or tell me a story about when you did this or did that. And it was always a lot of fun. Like, one of my most exciting things was on the night before we had a jet charter flight. Like, I would Google the person's name. I would Google the itinerary to see who we were flying the next day, and I would get all of these questions like, how did you do this and this and this and this and this? And a lot of times the pilot I was flying with would be like, Travis, we got to fly the plane now, man. Like, they don't want to just talk business. And so yeah, I always had to kind of make sure that, like, I was also flying the airplane at the same time, but my mind was always going on business. I think that was probably about the closest to mentorship I ever had. I didn't necessarily ever know to ask, like, hey, could you mentor me? And I think that that's something that I wish, like, if there's anything I could have done different, I wish that I would have had stronger and better mentors along the way. I made a lot of mistakes that, had I had a seasoned expert on my side or in my corner, I wouldn't have made the same decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can either wish that I'd had that, or I can go ahead and be a mentor now. And so now I'm being a mentor to people who are going through similar situations that I went through.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. That's a great why right there. Yeah, I love that. So, any other kind of dreams or visions coming up for you in the future? Or are you going to focus
I
here for a
have an
while?
idea, and I haven't really started. I think that really it probably only takes me, it really probably only takes you asking me that question to get it going. But I have a nonprofit
Oh.
in my head, and I know it could work. and it's something I'm very, very passionate about. And it's not something that have been able to accomplish yet. I thought that I was going to be able to accomplish it, and then it got kind of derailed when I left the last company. And so, yeah, I have an idea. I'm in that very initial stages of seeing how it goes, but
Yeah.
it definitely has something to do with water and hydrating the masses.
Oh, very cool. Okay, well, we'll be on the lookout for that. That sounds very exciting, actually.
And now that
Um,
I've said it, now I got to do
yeah.
it, right? I
Well,
like
it doesn't
that.
sound like you've had too much trouble with the doing part in the past. So I feel like that's where so many people do get hung up. They have ideas, me as well. I've got plenty of ideas, but the actual execution of the idea can get pretty sticky. So that sounds like what you're really helping people with the most.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, sometimes I have to in the industry we say we got to call the baby ugly. We got to tell them that they have an ugly baby, which that's not a great term, but it's just what people say. You know, and sometimes I have to say, hey, look, you know, like you're maybe too far ahead of your time, or you're too far behind, or
Mm.
you know, this is maybe not the best, you know, rendition of this, and maybe we need to go back to the drawing board for a minute. But yeah, for the most part, it's just so much fun being able to work with such a diverse group of people. I mean, we're working on electronic products and
Mm.
stuffed animals and kids, you know, toys and products, and we're working with just all kinds of stuff that it's just really fun for me to be a part of. And I feel very honored to, you know, partake in some of these companies that the Tumala group's getting to play with, which is just so cool. And help,
Yeah.
I should say help. It's not necessarily play. And I know that there's a lot of sleepless nights for them, but for me, now that I'm kind of once removed, and I can kind of see it as an observer, it feels like play because I have so much dang fun.
Well, that's when you know you're doing what you should do. I think that's really great
Yeah.
when work isn't feeling really at all like work. So, no, that's great. Well, how can people find you? And you know, are there any kind of summary words that you could give entrepreneurs out there who are really kind of wanting to do, you know, some big things and feeling stuck?
Yeah, I think that now is the time. I think that we need entrepreneurs now more than we've ever needed them before. From all that I see and I gather, we're going through a real change right now. And in the coming months and weeks and months and years, we're going through some pretty big shifts of consciousness and some pretty big shifts of change. And I think that we need entrepreneurs to step up and get going and get in the game or up their game wherever they are in it. And I think that the structures that we've seen historically are going to be changing. We've seen corporations starting to break up and CEOs starting to kind of just disappear. And we
Mm-hmm.
need people to fill in those gaps. And we need to bring the focus back to America and making things as close to home as we possibly can. It's not always possible, and now is not necessarily the best time for everything to be made here. But I do believe that we need more people to step up and be entrepreneurs. Um, and I am not really on social media, but I am on LinkedIn, Travis Rossbach, Rosbach on LinkedIn, and or Travis at tumalogroup.com, TUMALOGROUP.com.
That's great. Thank you so much. And yeah, really, it is an interesting time. It's just everything is changing. Everything from education to everything. There's nothing that I can think of really that isn't changing right now. So yeah, it does seem like the wide open spaces are there for entrepreneurs. Um, you know, are there any particular qualities that you think a person should maybe have or demonstrate to be a successful entrepreneur?
I think tenacity and curiosity are the two words that just come to mind just now when you asked me that. Um, it's not easy. It's not for the weak of heart, and it's not for those who believe that they know everything. Because there's always more to learn, and there's always more to do. And it, but at the same time, if it becomes a passion, or if it is a passion, then time flies. And like I say, you get in that zone and there's really no such thing as time. And there's ways to even bend time and kind of warp it and get way more accomplished in any amount of whatever it says on your watch or the clock on the wall. And yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. I love that idea of time has come up so much on this show in the last year with people who are really smart and really successful. And we're here to talk about money, and ultimately we end up talking about time. But what would you, what any thoughts on that as you do become successful, and what any kind of parting words with respect to time? Because it seems like, despite outwardly people talking about wanting more money, in a lot of ways it really is about more time to do what you want to do.
Yeah, I think that there's probably people way smarter than me that have done research on this, but I believe that I've heard that time is actually changing, like physically changing. And I don't know enough to even talk about that. But I do know that it's not necessarily a one-to-one correlation. What is on the clock on the wall is not necessarily what is affecting myself and all that I am possible and capable of. It is just a representation of a communal thought. But if I
Right.
don't join that group consciousness that 1 hour is 60 minutes and 1 minute is 60 seconds, if I don't necessarily subscribe to that, I don't necessarily have to be beholden to those rules. And I find myself personally that when I'm passionate or I'm curious, I can get way more accomplished in that same unit of time than in any other that I'm not passionate or curious about. I think Einstein said something about relativity. Like if you, I think he said, and I'm paraphrasing and I don't even know if this is right, but he said, if you put your hand on a hot woman for 6 seconds, it feels like, or no, for 60 seconds, it feels like 6 seconds. If you put your hand on a hot stove for 6 seconds, it feels like 60 seconds. I'm kind of paraphrasing that, but for me, like that's relativity. Like
Yeah.
it's all very relative, and I do believe that it's very possible to kind of step outside of those quote unquote laws and work in your own sort of parallel reality. Which, not to get so science fictiony.
I love that. Yeah, no, that's fascinating actually. And I do think that there are those days where you do an hour's worth of work and you feel like, that would normally take me 8 hours. It was just a level of focus and maybe disregard for the clock that you don't usually have, or I don't know. That's so interesting. But thank you for sharing that. That gets people thinking for sure, me included. But well, I've loved this conversation. I so appreciate you joining us, and you have amazing things that you're able to help people with. Um, yeah, so I'm so glad you came on, and I'm so glad that you shared what you shared, and I certainly hope that listeners will reach out to the Tumalo group and to you on LinkedIn and see what else you're up to, and how you might be able to help them. It's wonderful to have a resource when you do have an idea, especially for a product idea, and you literally have no idea how you would produce that. So there you are. That's now we have a resource. So thank
Yeah,
you
yeah.
so much.
That's where I step in.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's been awesome. You've given me a lot to think about and books to read. I mean, this has been great. Thank
Okay.
you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you have a great day, and I'll be following you for sure. Really interesting.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Michelle.
Okay. Well, and thank you, listeners, for being here. We love having you listening to the Money and You Show. Please subscribe on anywhere that you listen to podcasts, Apple Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all the ones. And thank you, Tony, from ubngo.com. We'll be streaming here live at 7 o'clock on Mondays, and you can also see it on the Limit Free Life YouTube channel and Facebook page and other places. So please listen in. Connect with me, Michelle at limitfreelife.com. If you have any questions, comments, you'd just like to chat about your business or your career or your money. So that's it for today. See you next week.